Coach, we've seen this team play much better. What would you attribute maybe tonight's effort to?
Yeah, I think there's a number of factors. We're coming back from a pretty good stretch of games where I thought we didn't have, talked about before the game, finding some juice. We didn't have that, and I think when we talk about that, it manifests itself in just a competitiveness or an urgency, whether it be up at the point of a screen in execution or someone makes a three, or not running hard enough where we get spacing and we can get to the rim. We didn't run at all offensively at the beginning of the game. We just didn't have good possessions. We took contested, mid-range shots without moving the ball. And that's not who we are. That's not how we play. So I think our commitment to some of those things offensively was lacking, especially early. We started finding a little of that. And part of it for us right now, another part of it is, we're integrating a couple new guys, on the fly. And that's something that we need to be aware of, that there are usually, when you do that, there are stretches that, are like this, where you can see those things. Either players, collectively don't quite understand what we're doing. It's not habitual. And, that interaction, we got to find that on the fly. As that's going on, we can't give up a 52-point quarter. That may be all I should say. Our competitive focus on the defensive end, just that during that stretch in particular, is not where it needs to go. And that results in all kinds of breakdowns and executions, and they made us pay for that. So I think it's important for us to understand that this is a process, and to the extent that we're really focused on the things that I think we know when we do make us successful, that happens quicker. And you do see it happen during the course of the game at various times. It just has to happen more. And that wasn't the case tonight, obviously. So, it's one of those games some games you say flush it. You flush it when a game is in a way that watching it and trying to understand it may not have an impact on you improving. I don't think this is one of those games. We need to understand why it happened, and that's part of where we are. And then we need to be ready Monday. Okay.
And then on a micro level, going back to that 52-point quarter, would you attribute some of that to just overhelping, guys not communicating, especially with integrating new players in?
You can't. If there's three things in a given possession, if the run and pick and roll, you're not far enough up, Simon sits at three. If you're trapping and you don't trap, Jaylen Brown goes by you and puts you in the rim. If you're trapping and you're doing the right thing and there's a roller going and you don't rotate, it's a dunk. If you bum, take away that, you don't rotate to the corner, it's a three. So we had all that. We had all that in every, in all those situations. And the thing that has to happen is when they run a certain play consecutive times, whether it be 2, 3, 4 times, that's where your level has to go up. We have to deny the ball to someone to try to take them out of the play. And we didn't have that grit that we needed. Whatever coverages and all those things, those things, nothing's going to work if we don't have that urgency and focus. And we've had we just have to. We have a small margin, so we've got to be. We're not going to be perfect, but we've got to be. We've got to try to be.
Coach, you talked about the integration of the new players coming off a West Coast trip, and then a game like tonight. What do you see as far as the process of getting them integrated so this team can maybe moving to a different direction in a positive.
Yeah, well, I don't want to, get into like the sky's falling. We played well against Golden State and won. We played a Laker team that played one of their best games. We were right there against Portland, and then had a horrible stretch and lost the game. And tonight we were bad. So this adversity is something we've got to use. And I think formulaically, that's the good thing. There's things that we know if we do, that we'll be better, and that means running. That means playing with the pass. That means getting in the paint, having our eyes out. All those things that when we're playing well and we're efficient offensively, that's what we're doing. And the same thing on the defensive end. I won't list them all, but those are things that we all agree on, that are absolutes that we have to do consistently to be good. And we've got to commit to that, because some of them aren't habitual right now. Got to keep working.
Coach, a strong night for Jaylen Brown tonight. What made him effective on the defensive side of the ball?
A couple things. I thought early first couple possessions, he just was driving us, and I think I talked about that before the game when I was asked about, how do you guard him? We have to have more resistance. He's physical, but when he gets that deep and just gets his shoulder in, and then we have to be shifted. We have to help more where there's just less space. He scored a lot of different ways. Then they scored out in the open court, when we either turned the ball over or didn't get good shots offensively. But, he's been doing that. And various matchups, we really, no one ever really was able to impact that individually. And when that is the case, you need more from everybody collectively. If there is a pick and roll, we trap them. It's where they got some of their threes, because our rotations weren't as sharp as they needed to be. But there was a lot of lack of execution in, situations with an action, with the pick and roll, with a handoff. And then I think, in one-on-one isolation situations, he went through us a lot. In addition to getting around us when he's just attacking through us, we just have to have, more resolve.
Coach, in the third quarter, you really needed a basket a couple of times, and Jalen Johnson seemed to have like a fast break opportunity, and he kicked the ball out. I think one went to Veet and one went to Luke, and they missed a three-pointer, but it felt like Jalen had an advantage where he was going downhill at the basket. Would you like, especially in that moment?
Yeah, where you're going is a really hard place to go, and I'll tell you why. Because it's very easy for us, and for me, I'm telling you what I try not to do, is to try to predict a read a player should make at a given time in the game. So one of the reasons that he gets 13 and 14 assists is because when he does get in there and he makes a read, because there's two guys there and he kicks it out and someone makes a shot, say he made the right play. He kicks it out, someone doesn't make the shot. Now we say maybe he should have kept it. And he one of his strengths is making those reads, and his ability to finish on the rim and to play make. So he understands the areas, the situations that he needs to find. When we're not running, we're not using him as effectively as we can. When the ball's not being moved quickly and they're shifted, those are harder situations for him. So I know the plays you're talking about, and he had a few of those where he went to the rim and he had a great look and didn't go in. Had a couple he went to the rim and maybe he got fouled, didn't get a call. So as long as we're playing, we're thinking the right way and trying to make plays like you're describing, I think over time we're going to be okay. It's when we don't do those things, we're just our efficiency still goes. You can still score. We're just not going to score at as high a level given the team that we have. And I think I was happy in the third quarter. When we came out, and that was a stretch. Probably you could we could say maybe he overpassed in that situation, but it's coming from a place where he was trying to do something for someone else. And the best teams at the best times, when they're playing the best basketball, everybody's trying to help someone else. And that level of connectivity is really hard to find. When you do find it, sometimes it's hard to hang on to. And just once you turn on the light, it just doesn't stay on. And that's part of having, integrating some new players. Those things. You have to kind of rediscover those maps with a new group of guys. Okay.